as usual, by wishing you good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is for you, whatever date it actually happens to be for you. And we will begin this morning, as usual, by reciting the prayers for going for refuge and bodhicitta. So, one moment. Please recite these prayers with great faith and devotion in the three jewels. O Sanje Chedan Sogi Chonam La Chancho Bardo Dane Chapsum Che Dagi Jenyengi Besunam Je Drola Penjer Sanje Robar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Bardo Dane Chapsum Je Dagi Chenyen Gi Pesanam Gi Rola Penjer Sanje Robar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Bardo Dane Chapsum Che Dagi Chenyen Gi Besunam Je Dola Penjer Sanje Robar Sho until enlightenment I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and the sublime Sangha. By the merit of my listening to the Dharma, may I reach Buddhahood to benefit beings. Until enlightenment I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and the sublime Sangha. By the merit of my listening to the Dharma, may I reach Buddhahood to benefit beings. Until enlightenment I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and the sublime Sangha. By the merit of my listening to the Dharma, may I reach Buddhahood to benefit peace. Semjen tamje dewa dan dewe judan demral juji donga dan donga ji judan rawa jurji donga mebe dewa tamba dan min rawa jurji nyeren chada nidan rawa danyon shambula nebra jurji. May all sentient beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be parted from the highest joy, which is free of suffering. May they dwell in the great equanimity, free of attachment or hatred for those near or far. In the Dharma expanse palace of Akanishtas, the essence of all Buddhas of the three times, who shows me directly my mind is Dharmakaya. I prostrate to the glorious exalted Guru. Please bless me and all beings that our minds become the Dharma. Please bless us that the Dharma become the path. Please bless us that the path dispel confusion. Please bless us that the confusion arise as wisdom. And now think to yourselves that we need to bring lasting benefit, lasting happiness to ourselves, and not only to ourselves, but all other sentient beings as well. For how can we be comfortable when we can look out and see other sentient beings who are suffering? And we need to bring ourselves to happiness. So if we want true happiness and comfort, we need to bring others to happiness. The only lasting happiness is the state of perfect enlightenment, or the state of Buddhahood. And so please think to yourselves that we are listening to these teachings today with this motivation of bodhicitta, of wanting to bring all sentient beings to the state of Buddhahood. And that we are listening to the Dharma for that reason. The Dharma that we are listening to is the Treasury of Abhidharma by Vasubandhu, as explained by the ninth Karmapa Wangchuk Dorje in his commentary, Youthful Play. And of the 8 chapters of the Treasury of Abhidharma, some people might be thinking, I know I've said this already today, but some people might be thinking, but there are 9 chapters in the outer commentary. Why are there only 8? Because the actual root text that Vasubandhu wrote first only has 8 chapters. And traditionally, it's the root text that is considered the most important. The auto commentary is like a support for how to understand the root, but it's the root that's important. The root has 8 chapters. In the Tibetan commentary tradition, they write commentary on the 8 chapters. And so the 8 chapters, and of these 8 chapters, we're talking about the 6th. The 6th area, the teachings on the paths and individuals. And this has 3 parts: an explanation of the paths, an explanation of the individuals, and a specific explanation of the paths. We've finished the explanation of the paths. That's the explanation of the paths of accumulation, joining, and path of seeing, and a bit on the path of meditation. We're speaking now about the path of individuals. This has 3 topics: the explaining the 4 pairs of individuals, classifying them into 7 enumerations, and combining them into 6 substances. So we're talking about the first of these, the 4 pairs of individuals, the pairs of entering and abiding in stream enter, entering and abiding in once returner, entering and abiding in non-returner, and entering and abiding in arhat. So this explanation of the 4 pairs of individuals has 3 topics: explaining the stream enter, explaining those previously detached, and explaining successive results. And we're in the 3rd, explaining successive results. Actually, that's the bulk of this section, is this section on the explaining successive results. And so the explanation of successive results has its explanations of entering and abiding in stream enter, entering and abiding in once returner, entering and abiding in non-returner, and entering and abiding in arhat. And we are speaking about entering and abiding in arhat, which has entering, abiding in the classifications of arhat enters and abiders. And that last one, the classification of the abiders, has quite a lot. Well, it has just 2 parts: analyzing methods of detaching from desire and explaining the results of spiritual way. And we're speaking about the results of the spiritual way. Oh, and where did we go? Anyways, in talking about the results of spiritual way, we went through that. Oh, wait a minute, I'm not talking about the results of spiritual way. Anyways, we are on page 479 of the book. We are talking about the classifications of the 6 types of arhats, and that's what we were speaking about yesterday. Basically, what we're saying is that there are different types of individuals who come to the results at different ways. You have the unmovable ones. They're the ones who are like great from the get-go. The Buddhas, the Pratyeka Buddhas. Those people are destined to be those because they have accumulated a lot of merit. Now, because they've accumulated a lot of merit, their faculties are sharp. The rest of us, our faculties are not sharp because we haven't accumulated as much merit. So what are we? Well, we're either capable to realize, which means we might become the unshakable, or we are I just want to make sure I'm saying these all right. The capable to realize or unshaken from abiding, they're the ones. The capable of realizing can improve themselves. The unshakable from abiding don't have to worry so much about regressing unless there's something big. but they're not going to get so much better because they're kind of like the just sort of B student, never good, never bad, just kind of average the whole time. And you've got the ones who need the protected ones, or those who need to guard themselves to keep from regressing. Those with the volition for death who think themselves would be better to die before I regress from being an arhat, and the regressible ones who are definitely going to regress. So those are the 6 types of individuals as arhats. And then the next section, the section that we've gotten talk about as well, do these 6 classifications apply to other beings as well? So here, as it shows in our book, this is the section, it's on page 479, applying the classification of families to others as well. In other words, this is saying, can we look at other beings who have not yet achieved the state of arhat, ordinary individuals and learners who are on the paths of seeing and meditation? Can we call them by these 6 families? And the answer is 6 families, is verse 58c, 6 families of learners and non-nobles. So do only the arhats have 6 families, or do others also have 6 families, you ask? It's not only arhats, there are 6 families of learners and non-nobles, individuals in the same way, because families of arhats precede the attainment of arhat. In other words, you already have your capacities before you have your certain faculties. It's the difference is the faculties, really. It's how capable you are. We have those already before we get to the point. And so, we can kind of look at ourselves and see, well, I mean, like, do I have the same capacity of a Buddha? It's like, no. So, no, I'm definitely not in that sharp cat. I don't have the sharp faculties. I'm in the lower faculties. So when you're in the lower faculties, there are a couple of important things to think about. The first is that there's a danger. We have to be careful. It's like the last line of the Treasury of Abhidharma is, all those who want freedom, be careful. So if we're on the path and we want to achieve liberation, we have to be careful about ourselves. Because if we aren't careful, we might go backwards. And I think we can look at this in ourselves. If I look at myself, on the outside, it looks like I've been given the title of Kempo and I'm teaching and all this. But when I look on the inside, I wonder, well, for every step forward, I think I've taken maybe 1 or 2 steps backward. Have I really actually made any progress? I know more words, but do I know any more in the act? Do I actually know any more in meaning? So you have to look at that. Is my motivation better or worse than it was before I started? We have to look at that for ourselves. And you can't sit on your laurels. You can't just sort of sit back and say. And also, I think one thing that's especially important for those of us from European backgrounds, our culture is not a Buddhist culture. Our language has been shaped by centuries of Christianity and Christian thought. They call it, in America, they call it Judeo-Christian, but it's really, when you come down to it, it's the Christian tradition that's shaped our language and culture in English and probably most European cultures. Then on top of that, we have centuries of scientific thought. And now we've had probably 130, 140 years of a lot of, since Freud started writing in the 1890s, something like that. So psychology at the end of the 19th century started to become very strong. And when you look at the influences we have in our culture and our education, we've got the political ideas of liberty and so forth, whatever that means, that have been with us and certainly have gotten stronger since the 18th century. And so a lot of these, on a surface level, have a lot of similarities to Buddhism. But the underlying attitudes are different. The motivations are different. So we have to be careful. We have to be careful of ourselves, especially. It could be when we feel like we're taking a step back, we're getting to the point where we're actually getting to our cultural preconceptions. So if we are studying any Buddhism, including the Abhidharma, and we find a way to make it fit inside our framework, that's made either by Christianity or more likely for people who are coming from a secular background, from a sort of scientific or psychological background. Like, how does this fit with sort of like a scientific or psychological way of thinking? But how does, if it really fits, then it can't help us overcome it. Actually, we're probably not seeing what it is. We have to remember, what do we want to do? We have to remember that basic motivation that we have to have. It's if it's going to be Buddhist practice. If you are studying the Abhidharma and you are thinking to yourselves, this is like if you're studying it like an academic topic, if you're thinking you're learning something and learning names and categories and so forth and not actually applying it to yourself, not like actually looking and saying, how can I use these teachings to help me along the path? What is this understanding doing for my understanding of my practice? Then at that point, it's not really actually doing much. The words are Buddhist, words were Buddhist, but are we actually practicing it? Are we actually studying in a Buddhist way? So a lot of it comes down to our basic attitudes, and are we willing to look at our own preconceptions? Because usually what happens is we get something that seems, oh, that's pre-modern. In the Abhidharma, they teach that the world, I mean, there's a classic one. We're not talking about it this year. We spoke about it last year. They teach that the world is flat. Therefore, this is just kind of all bunk. There's no jhana or formless meditation. All these teachings about arhats and things like that, no. The things about the afflictions, oh, those are interesting, but arhats, no. How can there be an arhat? Reincarnation, no. Once returners, come on, you're dead, you're dead. If we come up to that, if we get to that sort of level where we can't get past that, then we're not actually going to really get the benefit we need to get out of this. I mean, and of course, in the Tibetan tradition, we don't actually practice the same meditation, so it gets harder for us to see the connection to our own practice. But the basic principles, as I said the other day, it's the same. You go through, you study, you contemplate, you meditate, and as you meditate, you develop the wisdom that then allows you to eliminate the problems, which are the afflictions, according to the Abhidharma. The afflictions are also, you could say, the cognitive obscurations, the Mahayana. This process is similar on the sort of basic level. You develop wisdom, which is seeing things as they are. That comes gradually in stages. That's why we have 89 steps in the spiritual way, according to here, or the 10 levels of a bodhisattva. And the 10 levels of the bodhisattva also have, different levels of meditation within each one. If you study the Ornament of Clear Realization, all of the different trainings and so forth and aspects that you look at, that's just bewildering. So there are a lot of steps we go through. We go through each step. So when we're talking about here in terms of our faculties, the first thing is we have to be careful not to go back and to make sure in particular that we're not letting our own preconceptions limit us. So most of you who are listening, or many of you who are listening, are probably already people who are committed Buddhist practitioners. But even as a committed Buddhist practitioner, for myself even, I look up and I find out, there's a cultural attitude. I come up against it, it's hard because they're inculcated in us from the time that we are wee little babies, right? So we have to be careful of those. That's the first thing. So we have to be careful not to backslide. The second important thing is that we have to realize that we can improve. If the difference between the Buddhas and us is that the Buddhas are sharp faculties because they have more merit, we can gain more merit. We can gather the accumulation of merit. And doing this is really important. I mean, there are reasons why all these methods are taught. Sure, when you're being generous or practicing discipline or so forth, you're not meditating on the ultimate nature. But fine, you can't meditate on the ultimate nature unless you have merit, and you can't gain the merit unless you begin with generosity and discipline, and then eventually to get start gaining the merit gained from meditation. We have to start from the beginning and gather a lot of merit. And as you do so, you will see what happens in your being. The discipline that keeps you from doing things wrong, that then disturb your mind. The practice of generosity that really helps you in many ways, as well as helping others. and then making dedications and making aspirations and doing all the various aspects that we need to do in order to gather the accumulation of merit, we can improve ourselves. Even if you don't improve yourselves or feel like you're improving, actually, you should also not be discouraged. You may look at yourself and say that you're in the lowest of the low family. I look at myself and I say, I mean, you might look at me and say, oh, some Kempo or something, he's got, wow, he's translated books. You know, wow, he's teaching and all this. I look at myself and I see that I'm in great danger of regressing. Of these 6 families, I feel like I'm probably the regressible one. I feel like there's a lot of danger about that. It's going to happen unless I do something to improve myself, right? But we should not be discouraged about that. And the reason not to be discouraged about that is that actually even people who seem to have really, really dull faculties can achieve really excellent results. We've got people like at the time of the Buddha, there are all these great arhats. And one of the greatest arhats was actually one of the most stupid people, the most actually dull, dumb, couldn't understand a thing. There are 2 brothers. Pantaka was the elder brother. And Pantaka went and he started learning how to read from a Brahmin, and he learned the alphabet in like an hour. And then, you know, he just went on, he was reading all the Vedas and so forth. Then he went off and became a Buddhist monk and quickly became an arhat and an important disciple of the Buddhas. He was later one of the 16 arhats. And then there was his little brother was also named Pantaka, but he was called Little Pantaka, Chota Pantaka. So Chota Pantaka was like, he was Chota Pantaka. Well, okay. Your brother, he was so bright and he learned the alphabet. You better go to the Brahmins and learn the alphabet and start to read. And they go to the alphabet. And of course, they're working with the Sanskrit alphabet, which is similar. The Tibetan alphabet was based on it. So those of you who studied Tibetan will probably understand a little bit of this. The teacher would say, ka. And he'd say, ka. So no, it's not ka. It's ka. And okay, ka. And he'd say, na. No, it's not that. Okay, ka. No, it's not that. So, and day after day, for month after month, he couldn't even learn the alphabet. They spent hours upon hours trying to teach him the alphabet. He couldn't learn a thing. And everyone said, this is the most stupid person we've ever met. I've never had a student as bad as this. He's horrible. What are we going to do? Okay. There's nothing else to do. Send him, his brother's a monk, make him a monk too. So they sent him off. I'm kind of abridging the story. I wanted to look it up before I told you, so but I didn't have time to actually look it up. Or actually, more accurately, I wasted the time that I could have used looking it up. So I'm kind of ad-libbing it. But the basic gist of the story is this. So they send him to the monastery, becomes a monk. Well, he needs to start learning the sutras. And so the sutras all begin saying, you know, thus have I heard. Okay. Evam maya shrutam. So, evam. Huh? Kam? No. Evam. No. Evam. Tam? No. So I just couldn't get into it. You couldn't even learn how to say, evam maya shrutam. You know, it's like, how, thus have I heard. It's like saying in English, okay, so say thus. It? No, not it. Thus. That? No, not that. Thus. Cat. No. You couldn't learn anything. He was hopeless, absolutely hopeless. They didn't know what to do with him. You can't even learn the sutras. If you can't learn the sutras, how can we teach you to meditate? They just didn't know. And so everyone was frustrated with him, and he was completely depressed. It's like, I was too stupid to learn the alphabet. I can't learn the sutras. What am I doing? I'm here. I'm a monk. I'm just a complete failure as a monk. I can't do anything. My brother, he's already an arhat, and look at me. I'm just so stupid. What is an arhat anyways? So, then the Buddha comes along, and all the other monks are going out on the alms round. And Chodapantaka does his best to go and get his alms round, and he's going to go and take a, but the Buddha says, no. Today, you stay here, and I want you to sweep the courtyard. Okay. Now, as you sweep the courtyard, say, sweep away dirt, sweep away stains. Can you remember that? And it was the Buddha saying, so Chodapantaka actually remembered to say, sweep away dirt, sweep away stains. Okay, so the Buddha said, now, every time you sweep, say, sweep away dirt, sweep away stains, sweep away dirt, sweep away stains. So Chodapantaka says, okay, I'll do this. And so they're starting, going through, and so they all go off, and he's there, sweep away dirt, sweep away stains, sweep away dirt, sweep away stains. And so he's going through and he's doing this, sweeping the courtyard and saying, sweep away dirt, sweep away stains. And you're thinking, what are the stains? Oh, it's karma and affliction. What are they hiding? Oh, sweep away dirt, sweep away stains, sweep away dirt. Oh, it's like everything's impermanent. Yeah, sweep away dirt, it's suffering. Sweep away dirt, sweep away stains. He's sweeping and saying this over and over again and thinking, all the 5 aggregates, what, my form, what is it? It's impermanent. Wow, it's suffering, it's painful. Yeah, especially if you're stupid. And, it's like sweeping and, why, who am I? Well, there's no me. There's no self. And it's all selfless and so empty and selfless. And so he's like going through and he goes through and he like sweeping the courtyard, following this instruction, he achieves the state of arhatship. They all come back. And the Buddha says, well, how did it go? And he said, oh, this is what I realized. And he explained everything that he'd realized. And the Buddha said, now you've become the arhat. So, here is the most stupid of stupid monks. And there are lots of stupid monks, and there still are. And he was the worst of them. And yet he became an arhat. So if someone like that can do it, then what about us? Then after that, I have to tell, I don't know how much of the text I'm going to get through. I wanted to get through a bit, but then I decided I wanted to tell stories, and so it's okay. So then he decided. So then at that time, every 2 weeks, one of the bhikshus would be assigned to go teach Dharma to the bhikkshunis. This is the way it worked. So that day was coming up in a couple days. Now, everyone knew that Chodapantaka was the most stupid of monks, but not everyone learned that he was an arhat immediately. So the Buddha said, okay, tomorrow Chodapantaka is going to go teach the monks, teach the nuns. And so they sent a messenger saying, okay, Chodapantaka is coming and he's going to teach the nuns because he's going to come and teach you tomorrow. They're saying, Chodapantaka? He's coming to teach us? What? He can't even say the alphabet. He can't even say Avamaya Shrutam. He can't even say the first words of a sutra. And you're sending him to teach us? You have no respect for us. We're always on the bad end of things. You're always mistreating the nuns. This is terrible. We got to do something about this. If they're sending the most stupid person over, we've got to embarrass him. So how do you embarrass someone? Well, they set up this huge lion throne in the middle of the nunnery. These lion thrones that we have in the Tibetan monasteries, they were doing them back at the time of the Buddha. They set up a huge one. Say, okay, we're going to make him sit on this. And since he's so stupid, he's going to be totally embarrassed and run away. We won't have to listen to the stupid monk give us a teaching, right? And then everyone in the area heard, Chodapantaka is going to come and he couldn't even learn the alphabet with a Brahmin. He couldn't learn any of the sutras. We got to go see this. This is going to be fun. Let's go see the spectacle. Let's see him make just a complete, idiot of himself. So let's go see that. So Chodapantaka, he knows that he's the most stupid of people, but he's an arhat. And so he goes and he gets to the nunnery and all the nuns and everyone's looking at him. And there's a huge crowd of people looking right at him. There you are. Look at you. This is Chota. He's going to teach us the Dharma. Everyone's tittering and laughing. It's like, oh. And he kind of like goes, okay. And then all of a sudden, he was sitting on the throne without anyone seeing him get on it. He just used the miracle of the elephant's arm, according to the sutras. I'm not exactly sure how this miracle works, but it's the arm of the elephant, and suddenly ended up sitting on the lion throne. Everyone's saying, wait a minute, how did he get up there? He just like miraculously got on the throne. He didn't even climb on it. He's just up there. How did that happen? And then he started teaching them the Dharma. These are the 5 aggregates. This is form. Form is suffering. Form is impermanent, and so forth, teaching them the meaning of the Dharma. Now, he hadn't memorized the sutras. He was teaching the meaning that he had realized while he was, and they listened, and they were like, wow. So this is, the point of the story is that we start out where we are. And if we gather the accumulation of merit and we're diligent, if we really take to heart the fact that we have an incredibly short time in this lifetime to do something and use it well, then we can achieve great results, no matter how stupid we are, or no matter how arrogant we are, no matter how held back by our cultural preconceptions. If we are willing, no matter what our problem is, if we are willing to actually just practice the Dharma properly and try and have faith and devotion and follow the instructions that the Buddha gave that have been passed down to us, and we too can achieve results, just as did Chotapantaka. If he can do it, anyone can do it. So that's the point. We have to be there's a danger. We have to be careful that we're not going to fall back. And yet at the same time, we can't let that discourage of us. We have to actually realize that we have all the potential we need. We just have to use it. And this doesn't matter which school of Buddhism you're following. If you're following the Theravadan path, you can become an arhat. You may well be able to do it in this lifetime. The instructions are there. There are people who can teach it to you. You can follow them. If you're following the Mahayana, you can become a bodhisattva. You can realize emptiness. You can embark on the path. You can do it. We have the capacity, all of us. We won't talk about the Vajrayana. It's just too strange. But we have the ability. So we have to take that to heart and do it. So that's kind of the preamble to where we are talking about not the preamble, it's sort of like the digression after our first paragraph. So let's return to the text. So we were and here we're talking in particular about refining, or about the 6 different types of faculties. So are the 6 types of different individuals who are kind of distinguished by their faculties. So are we necessarily stuck in the same family? And this is no, we're not, because the faculties can be refined. So when can the faculties be refined? What paths can you be on? So the next topic is speaking about this. On which paths faculties can be refined? In other words, at which stage of the path can you improve yourself? And here, the text kind of does it the backwards way. It says, this is when you can't. And then implicitly, that lets you know when you can. It says, there's no refining on the path of seeing. You can't refine your faculties on the path of seeing. And implicitly, therefore, you can on the path of accumulation, the path of joining, which is where many of us are, the path of meditation, and the path of no more learning. The only one of the 5 paths where you can't refine your faculties is the path of seeing. So on the paths other than seeing, the faculties can be refined. There's hope for us. In other words, we can improve ourselves, right? But there is no refining faculties on the path of seeing. Why is that? So when you're on the path of seeing, so remember the path of seeing is just these 15 moments that go very quickly. You're seeing a truth, recognizing it, seeing it, recognizing it in a very quick succession, right? So because it's happening so quickly, training is impossible. This is the point. You're going too quickly through the stages of realization. You haven't got the time to stop and refine your faculties. You have to go through specific meditations to do that. Or in our case, we gather the merit to do it. Some refine their faculties while ordinary individuals. And so now here it doesn't tell us exactly what stages you do to it, but if we can see that the Buddhas and the Buddhas and the Pratyeka Buddhas who are already sharp faculties, what's the difference between them and us? It's the amount of merit they have accumulated. So we can see that merit is really important. Some refine while they're in the state of interest through faith, and here there's actually a typo or a missed edit. Should be convinced through faith, is I believe the term that I used elsewhere. This is the stage of the path of, it's the stage of after the path, when you're on the 16th moment of the clear realization and beyond, if you are of dull faculties. That's basically the stage you're on most of the path of meditation, right? State of convinced through faith. So at that stage, there are two points, right? There's convinced through faith and attained through seeing. Sharp faculties are attained through seeing. Dull faculties are in the state of convinced through faith. So that is the other state where you can, what do we say, refine your faculties. So now when we talk about regression, well, what do we talk about? What does regression mean? So this has 3 points, and so there's the actual point. There's regression from attained, from not attained, and from enjoyment. These are called 3 types. So 3 types of regression that are possible. The first is that you've got something and you regress from it. Either a type of samadhi, or in the Great Exposition, a result. You have it and you lose it because of lack of mindfulness. That's the first. The second is regression from not attained, which actually is not really quite regression. It's just saying that you could get it, but you don't. You could work to achieve that samadhi, but you haven't. And from enjoyment. So regression from enjoyment actually is more like regression from using. This word that I translated here as enjoyment is a very difficult one to translate into English. Longchupa. Can mean eating, it can mean using, consuming, but basically here it's saying you have a quality and you're not using it. So those are the 3 types of regression. So from a sutra, the Buddha said, I declare that those who have attained bliss indivisible, the 4 that arise from superior training in mind, that is the stream enters, once returners, non-returners, and arhats, can regress from any of them. But I declare that in no way can one regress from this one unshakable liberation of mind made manifest by body. So it is said. So this is like when you're an unshakable one made manifest by body. This also means someone who has achieved the absorption of cessation made manifest by body. So it is said. So how can an unshakable arhat who abides in bliss and the visible regress from the attainment of the 4 dhyanas? Excuse me. Any one of them, the 4 that arise from superior training, is not the 4 results, it's the 4 dhyanas. Excuse me on that, I said that incorrectly. The 4 that arise from superior training mean the 4 dhyanas. You can lose them. So how can you lose them? In general, there is regression from what has been attained by losing qualities. In other words, you've gained the dhyanas, but you lose them. That's the first type of regression. The second type of regression is regression from what has not been attained by not attaining what is to be attained. You could achieve them, but you just haven't. And the third is the regression from enjoyment by not manifesting what has been attained. These are the 3 types of regression. So the first is easy. You've got the easy to understand. You have the dhyanas, you have some sort of special miraculous powers or whatever, and you lose them. That because you just haven't maintained them, or you lose your mindfulness, you get distracted. So that's the first type. That's easy to understand. The second type is the type of regressing from what not is attained. In other words, you could achieve them, but not. And so there's a great story about this. I think I told part of the story in last year's class, so maybe you've already heard this. I don't remember if I told the whole story. At any rate, there was a bhikkhuni named Sirkya Samo in Tibetan, or Kapila Badri in Sanskrit. Kapila Badri. She had been she had been married to Mahakashyapa before. The two of them decided that they both wanted to go and achieve liberation. They had different paths. Her path was kind of horrible. She was a really beautiful woman and was mistreated terribly for that while she was wandering around looking for spiritual advice, and no one wanted to do that. So she had a horrible time. And then finally she met Kashyapa again after a few years or something. I'm not sure exactly how long. They met and he said, well, why don't you come and become a bhikkhuni? So she said, okay. She did. She was very intelligent and very diligent. She quickly became an arhat. But she didn't work at achieving like the clairvoyances or the miraculous qualities or so forth. She had everything. She could have done it, but she didn't. So one day she was going on her alms round and went into Rajgir. And at that time, this is after Ajatashatru had already deposed his father and became king, but before he kind of figured out what was going on in Buddhism. And he saw this incredibly beautiful nun come asking for alms. And he said, she shouldn't be a nun. She should be my wife. And so they seized her, put her in the harem, made her dress up in jewels and things like that. She was an arhat, so she couldn't, so it wasn't like that bad for her, but still, it's, like not appropriate. She was a nun. She didn't want to be doing anything. He raped her and all this, and, it's like bad. A few days later, the nuns came by and they managed to go by and see the wives in the harem. And they saw her and they said, well, why don't you use you're an arhat, why don't you use your miraculous powers to escape? She said, well, I haven't developed them. They said, well, okay, dummy, you got to develop these miraculous powers. Here are the instructions. Meditate on this. And so she sat down and she did the meditation. She developed the 6 clairvoyances, among them the power of miracles. Then I don't remember exactly how it happened. This is another one I should have looked up before. She must have flown up into the sky or something and flown off to where to where all the bhikshunis were staying. And it's like, and then Yudhishthira said, what? She flew away? I didn't realize she was an arhat. I didn't realize she could do that. And then he felt regret. So that's the regression. She could have developed the clairvoyances earlier, but she didn't. That's the point that we're talking about. And then the third type of regression is the regression of not enjoyment, by not manifesting what has been attained. This is sort of like, for example, the Buddha had achieved the absorption of cessation. He could have just sat down and entered the cessation and stayed there as long as he liked, but he did not. Why didn't he? Because, of course, he couldn't help anyone. The Buddha is filled with great compassion. How can you help someone when you're sitting in the cessation of absorption? So he didn't sit in it. That's the regression from enjoyment, by just not using it. Okay, so those are the 3 types of that, and those are all the stories I have to tell today. I didn't use up all our time telling stories, so we can get through a little bit more of the text. Which individuals regress in which way? The teacher has the last, the unshakable, the middle 2. The others have the 3. So of the 6 types of arhats, we've got the teacher, that is the Buddha, has the last of not regress, of regression from enjoyment, by just not using his qualities. Unshakable arhats, so this would be like, unshakable would be either the Pratyeka Buddhas or those people who have refined their faculties and become unshakable. They also have the regression from what has not been attained, by they might not have attained, for example, the absorption of cessation. And the others have 3. So everyone else can have all 3 types of regression. So of those types of regression, the teacher, the Buddha, has only the last, regression from enjoyment. He possesses all qualities, but does not make them all manifest, because they're not helpful to him, right? He does not have the other types of regression. The unshakable one has that last one of regression from enjoyment, as well as the middle, regression from what is not attained, too. Because the unshakable ones, they have not attained the dharmas of the superior individual. They haven't yet achieved it all. And because the other arhats can also regress from what is attained, they have the 3 regressions. So for that reason, because the unshakable ones can completely regress from enjoyments, this does not contradict the sutra. So this is talking about the quote that we'd gone through before, that those who have attained bliss indivisible, the 4 that arise from sublime being in mind, can regress from any one of them. So there's no contradiction to the sutras. So now there's a question, well, what happens after you've regressed? Are you like in danger of falling back into samsara? You're an arhat, you think you're safe, you regress. Are you in danger of falling into the lower realms again? No. The reason why is there is no death while regressed from the result. So the text says, while they're regressed, they do not die. They don't do what should not be done. So is an arhat who has regressed from the result reborn? Are they going to be stuck back in samsara? There is no such thing. It is not possible. Because while they, that is those arhats, all those arhats who have regressed, while they have regressed, they do not die before they've restored the result. How do we know this? It tells it in a sutra. The Buddha said, Bhikshus, noble listeners who are well-versed, listeners here means the disciples of the Buddha, the Shravakas, who are well-versed, might have some slight regression in mindfulness. So it's just like their mindfulness weakens, but that will disappear very quickly and be completely extinguished and completely eliminated. So if you are someone of the dullest of dull faculties and you achieve the state of arhatship, yes, you will regress, but it's not that serious. You will be able to, you will not die while you have regressed, in other words. Also, there are logical proofs for why there's no regression before you've died. If that were no, it says, it would be, if that were not so, it would be not be logical for their minds to be stable with regards to celibacy. In other words, you know, they wouldn't, there'd be the danger of them like breaking their bhikshu vows or something, because they'd lose mindfulness and then they'd start feeling lust and then they'd go off and do whatever. Monks or nuns, they'll do anything. So those who have regressed from a result, do not do anything that should not be done, that is exclusive of the result, such as sexual conduct. And this is kind of like when you have a great hero in battle who has slipped. You know, like, I don't know, who can we say? Achilles. Unless you find his heel. With Achilles, you know, he might slip in battle, but no one can strike him. So it's the same way. The arhats, they are arhats, even if they've regressed. And they will restore the result, restore their capacities before anything bad happens. So that's the discussion of what regression is. So the question is, well, what about refining faculties? How do you do it? So this is 4 topics: refining faculties while on the path, the essence of those paths, what the support for refining is, and on which levels one refines faculties. So here is saying, how do you, the topic is sort of saying, how do you do it? It's actually saying, when can you do it? Like as with most of the other topics of this, he's not giving, Vasubandhu does not give us specific meditation instructions. So refining faculties while on the path, this has 2 points. 9 paths of no obstacles and liberation for unshakable from strong familiarity. So if you are an arhat, or you are on the, if you are in the family where you can, if you want to refine your faculties and become in this family, in the sharp faculty of sharp faculties, the unshakable ones, you have to go through 9 paths of no obstacles and liberation. So you have, like, basically it's saying that there are 9 sort of stages, 9 obscurations that you have to remove. Each path of no obstacles removes an obstacle, an affliction, or an obscuration, and then there's the liberation from that in the next minute. That's the path of liberation. So you've got 9 sets of these paths, similar to the 9 sets of paths of no obstacles and liberation for each stage of liberation from each of the levels. So someone who's capable of realization. So this is someone who's of the 5 types of individuals with dull faculties, these are the best ones, capable of realization. Has 9 paths each of no obstacles and liberation to refine to the state of the unshakable one. And the reason is from strong familiarity with the dull family. You've been accustomed to it for a long time, and it has been stabilized by the learner, and non-learner paths. Excuse me, I need to note this typo. Okay. They've been stabilized by the learner and the non-learner paths. In other words, they've already become arhats. From the time of they've achieved the path of seeing until they become an arhat, that's been a lot of meditation. So they're really accustomed to the paths of the dull family. So it takes a long time. It's hard to improve your faculties that much, but it can be done. For example, someone who is accustomed to bad grammar, if someone is accustomed to bad grammar, it is difficult to correct it. This is easy. Or if you have a bad accent, it is hard to change to a good accent. For example, I would have a lot of difficulty where I required to start speaking received pronunciation. I can't do it. It's just impossible. No way that I'm ever going to learn how to speak with received pronunciation in English, like the Queen's English. Forget it. I'm stuck in my American accent. Okay, so now there's the learner. So when you are on a learner stage, when you're no longer, instead of the non-learner means for the arhats, well, for the learners, that's those people on the path of meditation. Excuse me, did I go over to one too far? On one each for the attained through seeing. So on the path of learning, before you've stabilized everything, one can train with one path of no obstacles and liberation to refine each of one's faculties from convinced through faith into the attained through seeing. In other words, from dull faculties into sharp faculties. When you are a learner, you haven't really ingrained it so deeply, so it hasn't been stabilized. Because it has not been stabilized by the learner and non-learner paths. So it's easy to change. Both have only one path of training. So this is whatever, so when you have, for any of these actually, it says both here, but and according to the auto commentary, it's clear that it's either for the learners going or refining from convinced through faith into the unshakable one, or for the learners, the people on the path of meditation, to go from convinced through faith into attained through seeing. It's relatively easy both of them have only one path of training. And the path of training is something we probably won't get to today, but we will get to tomorrow. There's the path of training, the path of no obstacles, path of liberation, the distinctive path. So here we mean that path of training. So now, what type of path can you do it in? Is there a worldly meditation to do it, or do you have to do an undefiled meditation? One of the ones, meditation, the noble being? The essence of those paths is they're undefiled. So the paths for refining faculties, all those paths of no obstacles and liberation are undefiled, because defiled paths cannot refine the faculties of noble individuals. Okay. But when you're an ordinary individual, you haven't got the undefiled paths. You can still refine your faculties, though, because ordinary individuals refine their faculties through the defiled aspects of peaceful and coarse. So you realize that the dull faculties are kind of coarse and that they're not as peaceful. You meditate. Now, again, he's not giving the actual specific instructions here, but you meditate and can improve your faculties as an ordinary individual. So this would mean in the time of the path of accumulation and the path of joining. But in general, for most of us, again, the way to do this is to gather the accumulation of merit. It's incredibly important. So what the support for refining is, and that means like what kind of a body do you need to have it? Can you do it on a human body, an animal body, a God body? What? The support for refining is refined by humans. So only humans can refine their faculties. On what support does one refine faculties, you ask? They're refined by humans, not on other supports. Now, the reason why, of course, it can't be refined by by animals and beings in the lower realms. That's easy to see. But well, what about someone who is in the form or the formless realm? The reason why it can't be reformed it can't be refined by then is, it says, because nobles born in higher realms cannot regress. As it is said, both they and those born higher do not regress or refine faculties. We had this verse a couple of days ago, right? So the nobles, so the noble beings on the form and formless realm cannot refine their faculties, only as humans. And nobles born of gods of desire develop renunciation for the great and fine objects and then see the truth. So their faculties are naturally sharp and they do not regress, according to the prince or Yashoputra, Jinaputra Yashoputra. So he says that if you're born as a desire realm god, you're naturally going to have sharp faculties, if you are on the path, that is. So now what level? So we've got the support. That basically means what realm is your body in. Then there's a question of what realm is your mind in, or what level is your mind in? So on which levels one refines faculties? So just to kind of this is kind of an important point for understanding the text as a whole. When it says support, it generally means your body. When it says level, it means which of the 9 levels, desire, 4 formless, or 4 form or 4 formless, your mind is on, because the 2 can be on different levels. If you're a human who has achieved the level, the dhyana meditations, for example. So on which levels one refines faculties, and this has 2 points. The non-learner, that is the arhats. Non-learner is on support of 9. So on what levels can one refine faculties? Non-learners refine their faculties on the support of 9 levels. So if you're an arhat, you can do it on any of 9 levels. This would be not unable, which is the undefiled preparation for the first dhyana, the special dhyana, the 4 dhyanas, and the first 3 formless levels, because each result of refinement is contained within any one of those realms. So this is basically all of the 9 levels of the different realms, plus the special dhyana, and accepting the peak of existence, not on the peak of existence. So that's for arhats. They can basically do it on almost any level of meditation. Not in the desire realm, because there's no meditation. The learner. What about, so people on the path of meditation, and learners on 6 levels, since refinement forfeits the result in progress, the result is gained. Well, this is an interesting verse. What does this mean? 6 levels is easy. You've got the level of not unable, the 4 levels of dhyana plus the special dhyana equals 6. Okay. So, and attached learners refine their faculties on not unable. If that means if you're still attached to desire, you're on the samadhi, the undefiled preparation for the form realm. And if they're detached, on any of the 6 levels of dhyana that they have achieved. That would include not unable, the 4 dhyanas, or the special. If they have attained the 3 levels of formless, though, then why don't they refine their faculties on that? Because they may well have achieved the levels. If they're a non-returner, they may have achieved the level of formless. So because the reason why is because refinement of the faculties forfeits both the mere result of the dull and the path of higher progress even has been attained, because the mere result of sharp faculties is always gained. What this is saying is that when you are when you're refining your faculties, you go, if you're just sort of sitting on the level like you're a non-returner and you're not trying to improve your faculties, then you're on the mere result. If you're trying to improve your faculties, then you're on what is called the distinctive result, or the path of higher progress. It's also called the distinctive result. When you actually achieve the result, then you've achieved the mirror result of the sharper faculties. And so you lose the results of the other one, of the lower 2 faculties. And so you become a mere non-returner. But if you're going to become a mere non-returner, you can only do that if you're on the levels of form or formless. You cannot do that in the formless. You cannot achieve the mere, there's no mere non-returner result on the levels of formless. In other words, when you achieve the levels when you achieve the state of the formless meditations, you have to be on the support of the desire support of the desire realm and using the and using the dhyanas. You have to be on those in order to achieve the formless realm. So that is why there is no there's no refining faculties in the formless, because you've already gone on to the formless and you can no longer just achieve you're already on the sharper faculties. There's no mere non-returner result there. So those levels do not support refinement. Okay. So now we can classify. When we look at it, we've talked about the 6 different types of the 6 different types of beings, or of individuals. You've talked about the regressed ones, the ones with the volition for death, the protected ones, the ones cause of abiding in the unshakable from abiding. They're the capable to realize. Those are 5 dull faculties, right? Then we've got 1 unshakable. But actually, we can split them up a little bit and end up with 9. So how do you do that? Well, you've got 2 Buddhas and 7 listeners. The 2 Buddhas are what? How does this work? Well, I'll just read I'll go through the commentary. It'll become clear. There are 9 arhats by distinctions in their faculties. So they have different. So this is basically saying that there's 9, really, though we say there are 6 types of individuals, there are actually 9 levels of faculties. So the Buddha and self-Buddha are instances of unshakable only, because they've been unshakable from the beginning of the path, or from the beginning of the path of seeing, right? So those 2 are unshakable only. They never had to refine their faculties, because these 2 Buddhas are both included within those liberated through both parts. In other words, liberated both by prajna and by absorption or meditation. So they are liberated through both parts. It means that they're liberated through both prajna and absorption or strong meditation. The 5 of regressed one and the 2 unshakable ones, those who become unshakable through purification, those who are unshakable from the beginning, are from the first of the 7 listeners. So the 5 from the regressed one to the capable to realize, they're the same, so that's 5. Then we've got the 2 Buddhas, and that's clear. So what about those other 2 unshakable ones? Those are beings who were sharp faculties from early on, but not Buddha or Pratyeka Buddha quality. And they so they become the unshakable one. Then there are those arhats, or those people who are completely arhat, who start out as an arhat who is capable to realize, and then they refine their faculties and become unshakable. So those are kind of 2 different qualities. So you've got that. So that divides the unshakable kind of into 4. You've got the 2 Buddhas, and then the arhats, the regular arhats who were unshakable from early on, and those who refined their faculties later. So that's the 9. And the reason for this classification is 9 have 9 different faculties. So they have different types of levels of faculties. Those 9 noble individuals are presented as 9, since there are dull, medium, and sharp faculties, each of which is divided into 3. So you can have dull of dull, middling dull, greater dull, sharper dull, and so forth. So they have 9 different faculties. So the regressed one, the one with volition and death, and the protected one are the 3 lesser, medium, and greater dull faculties. The one unshaken from abiding, the capable to realize, and the unshakable one from purification, that is the one who refined their faculties after he or she became an arhat. They are the lesser, medium, and greater medium faculties. Unshakable from the first, and the self or Pratyeka Buddha and the Buddha are the lesser, medium, and greater sharp faculties. So those are 9. So just saying basically different gradations of faculties. The important point here is just remembering that actually every individual has their own capacities. You group them roughly, you can get 9 or whatever, right? So you can actually group them in different ways, but this is just the way that it is described in the Abhidharma and the sutras. So now when we talk about those 9 types of faculties, actually we can say that we've talked about different types of individuals. So, and really when you can talk about them in 9 in terms of their families, but you can, their faculties, but you can also talk about them in terms of 7, which is kind of talking about them not just in terms of their faculties, but in terms of their training and the types of meditation and liberation and so forth. So the 7 individuals are made by training faculties, absorption, liberation, and both. Noble individuals can also be classified as 7. So noble individuals means those who have achieved the path of seeing and meditation, or those on the paths of seeing, meditation, and non-meditation, or non-learning, right? Those are the followers on the path of seeing. You've got 2, followers of faith and the followers of Dharma, right? Those 2 are on the path of seeing. Then on the path of meditation, we have 2 again. We have convinced through faith and attained from seeing. Again, so the first is, so those 2. Then you also on the path of meditation have the made manifest by body. Those are the ones who achieve the absorption of cessation, right? Then among the arhats, you have those who are freed by full knowing or prajna. They haven't developed the absorption of cessation. And those who are liberated from both, or through both. That is both the absorption of cessation and freeing themselves of all obstacles, and through prajna. So those are the 7 types of individuals. So of these 7 types of individuals, the distinctions in the first 2 are made by training. Because the first one, that is followers of faith, how do they train? They trained in the meaning by relying on others from the first. In other words, they had to get teachings. They studied, they were diligent, they achieved the path of seeing. Or by following the meanings of the sutras and so forth. These are the beings such as Buddhas or Prateka Buddhas, who just naturally realize the meaning. So that's on the path of seeing, the followers of faith and the followers of Dharma. And then we have on the on the path of meditation, you have the interest or convinced through faith. This is another place where it needs to be corrected in the text. Convinced through faith and attained through seeing are distinguished by dull or sharp faculties. So because the faculties are dull with strong conviction through faith and sharp through strong full knowing. So the interest through faith, they have the duller faculties, and the sharp faculties are what we call attained through seeing, right? They have the strong prajna. Then you have the family of made manifest by body, and that is distinguished by absorption, because those in that state can make the absorption of cessation manifest through their bodies. Because once you've achieved the absorption of cessation, once you have achieved, in order to achieve the absorption of cessation, you first have to achieve all of the levels of formless, because you enter the absorption of cessation from the peak of existence, as will be explained in the 8th chapter. So this is someone who's been through all the levels of subtle meditation and enters this even subtler meditation from that higher level. Because those in that state can make the absorption of cessation manifest through their bodies, as we described the other day. Liberated through full knowing or through prajna is distinguished by liberation from the afflictions. In other words, they haven't developed that strong absorption of cessation. Instead, they rely on their prajna to achieve liberation. And liberated through both aspects is distinguished by both liberation from the afflictions and by absorption. So not only have they used their prajna to liberate themselves from afflictions, they also have achieved the absorption, have none of the obscurations of absorption. So we've got these 2, right? We've got the liberated by the liberated through prajna and liberated through both. The liberated through prajna, the former, it says here, the former are liberated from the afflictive obscurations through full knowing. In other words, they use their prajna to eliminate the obscurations that are afflictions. And the latter, those who are liberated by both, who both have the prajna and the absorption of cessation, are liberated from those, that is the afflictive obscurations, and the obscurations to the absorptions, respectively. So the obscurations to the absorptions are not they aren't the afflictions so much, but they are the different types of obscurations that prevent you from achieving samadhi. You can be liberated while still having the obscurations to samadhi, because you might have the strong enough prajna to liberate yourself and achieve arhatship, but you might not necessarily be able to achieve the absorption of cessation and other absorptions. So Those second, the latter type, those liberated through both, as they have achieved absorption, they're liberated from the obscurations to absorption or liberation. So here, to just kind of, oh, I've got the wrong, I made something and I got the wrong, one moment. I have to, oh, there it is. Oh dear. Sometimes actually trying to do things, helpful things is not so easy as it seems like it should be. Okay, what do I want to do? Yes. All right. Now where did it go? There we go. Okay, so I just made this little chart showing you the 7 types of individuals in a chart. These are described, we've been through all, the first 5 of these we have already been through in the previous days. So the first, it's followers of faith and followers of Dharma. This is also the one that I think, well, in my experience, you hear about most, but maybe that's just because I have received, because Trungpa Rinpoche, my teacher, speaks about them frequently. There are these 2. So that's the followers of faith and the followers of Dharma. And so they're on the, this is, and when are you called by this term? You are called by this term when you're on the path of seeing, the 15 moments of clear realization. So it's during that time. And they're distinguished by the training, how you get there, right? Because followers of faith, well, what do? We study, we have faith, which means that it doesn't just mean like you feel this warm, fuzzy feeling. It means that you develop conviction and a longing and so forth. And someone else is teaching you. The followers of Dharma are those people who just naturally, because of their previous accumulation of merit, naturally understand and they follow the meaning of the Dharma. And they achieve the path of seeing through the meaning of the Dharma. So those are the 2 types. So followers of faith are dull faculties on the path of seeing. Followers of Dharma are the sharp faculties, right? As we discussed a few days ago. Convinced through faith and attained through seeing. These are the 3rd and 4th types. So convinced through faith means, convinced through faith means those beings who are on the path of seeing, who previously were followers of faith. So when you're a follower of faith on the path of seeing, and then you reach the 16th moment of clear realization, from that point onward, you are convinced through faith if you started out as followers of faith. So followers of faith becomes convinced through faith. And then the followers of Dharma become attained through seeing. They attain because they've seen on their own and seen without the faith. So their distinction is, did they get there because of their faith, or did they get there because of their prajna? Convinced through faith, got there through faith. Attained by seeing, got there through prajna. Okay, so those are that. Then we also spoke the other day about made manifest by body, which means non-returners who have achieved cessation. Achieved the absorption of cessation, so that's the 5th type. And they're distinguished by the absorption that they're in. In particular, they've achieved the absorption of cessation. Then we get to the different types of arhats, and we've got 2 types of arhats, those freed through prajna, and those liberated through both aspects. So the freed through prajna is they only have the prajna. Now, of course, they already have some level of meditative stability. They have at least have the stability of not the preparations for the first dhyana, not unable. And if any of us were to achieve this level of not unable, we'd say, wow, this is really strong meditation. But it's not like the actual form or the actual dhyanas or the formless absorptions. So they're, and they might also have achieved the form and the formless, but they haven't achieved the level of the absorption of cessation yet. So they don't have the complete control over meditation yet. And the liberated through both aspects is they have both the prajna that comes, and they also have the absorption and cessation. So they're liberated through both. So those are the 7 types of individuals. So when we're talking about those 7 types of individuals, they can either be discussed as, when we're talking about the 7 types of individuals, basically we're following what are the differences? How did they get there? That's the point of that topic. So now to return to the tops, we can actually say that you're talking about 7, but really you can say they're more kind of like there are 6. So combining those 7 into 6, how do you combine those 7 into 6? Essentially, you just leave out the made manifest by body. It's kind of separate. Let's not worry about it too much. So that's so just sort of figured it's folded into the other categories. We don't need to worry about it. So this has 2 topics, the actual and the elaboration. So the actual is there's 6. The 3 paths each have 2. So in other words, there are 2 on the path of seeing, 2 on the path of learning, 2 on the path of no more learning. In terms of their names, there are 7 individuals, but they are 6 in substance. In other words, what we're saying is that one of them is not different in substance from the others. It is like this: the 3 paths of seeing and so forth each have 2 substances. That means on the path of seeing, there are the followers of faith and the followers of Dharma. So each of those is a separate substance. On the path of meditation, there are convinced through faith and attained through seeing. So there are different levels, and in the Great Exposition tradition, there is like a substance for each of those. On the path of no learning, there are occasional and non-occasional liberation. So we spoke about those 2 yesterday as well. Occasional are those whose basically they're the really sharp faculties, and the unshakable ones, and the other 5 are all the those are the non-occasional, and the other 5 are the occasional, the ones who might regress. It's kind of dependent on conditions. So those are the 6. But of course, there are bazillions of ways that you can classify them, and Wangchuk Dorje is very kind in mentioning them. To classify them extensively, followers of faith alone can be classified in terms of their faculties, family, path, detachment, and support, for a total of 147,825. Followers of Dharma and so forth can also be calculated in the same way. So in other words, for each of those 6, there are tens of thousands of variations. The detailed method of classification appears under this topic in the Tika, which means in Mikya Dorje's commentary. So we will not overwhelm you with those 2 topics. And I'm just looking at the time, and I told enough stories that, well, it's easier to look and see where we're going in the book than on the screen. That's why I'm looking down at my book. And I think it's probably better to just leave it here right now. So we will, what do we say? We will continue tomorrow. We will be able to finish this chapter by sometime on Sunday. If I decide to tell more stories, then we'll finish it by the end of the class on Sunday. If I tell too many stories, we'll be working on it next week too. But we actually haven't got so much left on this chapter. At any rate, let's see, no chats from the Zoom audience. So again, please feel free to email your questions, and we will deal with them. Email them to the office at trangrimonastery.org, and they will forward them to me. So now let's dedicate the merit of teaching and listening the Dharma to the benefit of all sentient beings, so that they may quickly achieve the state of enlightenment. And with this thought, not just a thought. It's so easy to recite the dedications and not mean them. So we really have to think about ourselves. We've been, what do we say? It's now been I don't know, how many weeks has it been? 3 weeks that we've been going through this. And today in particular, we have gone through this. We've tried to have as good motivation as we can. And talked about that at the beginning. Of course, we're ordinary individuals, so we might have been distracted for points. Or we might have had other things coming up in our mind. But in general, we've been doing something good. And if you look at it just on a psychological level, when you do something good, if you take the time to appreciate it and say, yes, that was something, and to appreciate it, to recognize it, that kind of just makes it more stable in your mind. In addition, in the Mahayana, we dedicate the merit. If you take that merit and think to yourself, boy, this really shouldn't just be me. I actually want to do this with everyone. I want everyone to enjoy the benefit. It's kind of dedicate it to the benefit of all other sentient beings. Kind of give it away. When you're giving it away, there's no longer any selfish clinging. That's good for me. I feel much better. I've done my study. I feel better. There's less of that. So it's important, just looking on a purely psychological level. You think, I'm giving it away, then there's like no more of that clinging. It's kind of clean. So this ending moment, even though we often just run through these verses and thinking, okay, I have to pack everything up and go back and do this. Next thing I need to do, I have to go to the bathroom. You're thinking this. Actually, it's really important, whatever we do, to take the time to actually, what do we say? To take the time to actually let it sink in. And so that is one of the important functions of dedicating the merit. And I think we can actually appreciate that for ourselves. You have to look at it and see. You've got to take a moment to stop and say, yes, this was recognized that what you did had some good aspects. Good the whole time? We don't know. You take the good aspects and you dedicate them for the benefit of all sentient beings. And that really just makes it all a lot stronger inside yourself. And so for this reason, as we recite this prayer, and of course we do it once in Tibetan, which many of you, it's like we might as well be reciting in whatever language, some language. It could be reciting it in ancient Greek, and it wouldn't make much difference if you don't think about the meaning. When you're reciting it in a language that you know, when we sing it in English, it's still possible that you might be just thinking, oh, the melody is nice, I'm going to think about the melody. Or you could be thinking about anything. But if you're actually thinking to yourself, oh, if this actually can be of benefit, may this really actually benefit me and bring me to the state of omniscience, but not just for me, but so that all sentient beings, so that I can help all sentient beings achieve liberation from the great rivers of suffering, the ocean of suffering that is samsara. Then it's going to have more force if you actually think about the meaning as you are reciting it. So that's why we recite it twice, once in Tibetan because it's the tradition, and then once in English so we can really think about the meaning, but try to keep the meaning in mind as you recite it in Tibetan as well. And so let us now recite the dedication of merit. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sharing the wrong thing. Sorry. There we go. That's better. O sanam de tam je se bani tomne nye peranam pamchete Gegana chi balong chubai si pe tsolero kunyo ro sho By this merit may we attain omniscience, defeat the enemy wrongdoing, and free all beings swiftly from the ocean of existence, churned by great waves of birth, age, sickness, and death. Chamcho samcho rinpoche make panam ke gyurich ke pa nyamba me paryang konne gondo pelwar sho. May bodhicitta, great and precious, arise in those who have not roused it, never weakening in those who have. May it grow ever stronger and stronger. So thank you very much. We will continue tomorrow.